Let's talk about Erling Haaland and Manchester City. Could they be set for the most expensive contract talks ever? There's an interview out with him today, actually, with Jason Burton, the Telegraph. Didn't watch it. I read it on the way down from Manchester this morning. They're going to start contract talks with him, aren't they? Because his contract's only got 3 years and 10 months to run. I think they're trying to ward off any interest. I mean, how much is this going to cost them per week? This is going to be huge, isn't it?
God only knows. I mean, look. I mean, is there a necessity? I mean, there was always this idea that he was going to come to Manchester City. Well, there was an idea being mooted, not always this idea, that this was a club that he was going to pass through to end up at Madrid or Barcelona. I don't quite see why that would happen if Man City's dominance continues to be so significant, and I believe that there's a distinct possibility it will. But if anybody wants to see Erling Haaland get more money and create more wealth for himself as a result of the remarkable achievements, I grant you, and his level of performance has been phenomenal. But we are paying a player already £500,000-700,000 a week, aren't we? Isn't that what we're already paying him? So what are we talking about now?
So you're saying that there's no need to renegotiate a contract with 3 years, 10 months to go?
I guess I can't see why there would be. I mean, we've sat here and we've seen the ridicule. Different scenario completely, because Erling Haaland is a proven deliverer. So when we talk about the 7-year contracts that Chelsea put players on, you know, the idea that was to balance the financial fair play and make decisions based upon the current rules, I look at it and say he's got 4 years to go. Is that what we're doing now with players?
Might you do it in order to protect yourself, therefore get a longer contract and insert a huge buyout clause into it so that you know that whatever happens, if he does end up going to one of those two clubs...
Well, the thing is it depends how strong the player's position is in terms of he's not going to want you to have a buyout clause that prohibits his opportunity unless there's a huge upside in the current conversation. And if there's a huge upside in the current conversation, which means that if he's moving from whatever, I don't know what he's on. Let's say for the purpose of this conversation, he's on half a bar a week. Right, he's on £500,000 a week. In order to get him to sign a contract that in some way protects Manchester City, and part of that will be to protect the asset against someone coming along and creating division and then getting the player out the door without meeting a release clause. If they put in a price which is reflective of his value, or more so in the sort of territory of what the Spanish clubs do, which is really lock them up.
Yeah, £1 billion.
Then the player himself is compromising his outcomes because he almost moves away from the opportunity of being able to control his own destiny.
Slightly different in Spanish law, though, isn't it? You have to have a buyout clause in every contract. But
irrespective of whether you have to or you don't, in this instance, if they do insert a buyout clause that's huge, the player is taking one of his dealing chips off the table in 2 or 3 years' time. So that must mean, in order for him to want to do that, we're going to have to see something really rather significant.
It's fascinating to see. I mean, he's tearing it up at Man City, 44 goals in 42 appearances. He's still only 23 years of age. You still feel that there's an awful lot, Sam, to come from this player. I felt the second half of last season, he suddenly became much more physical, and then he was a sight to behold. You know, because he's got that extra aggression. As he matures, he really can only get better.
It's interesting to see how Craig Pawson handled him last week at Wolves.
Yeah.
Because he was very physical with him, wasn't he?
Craig Dawson, the centre-half at Wolves,
Yeah.
Didn't go man for man for him, did he? Give him a little bit of room, and he talked actually
pretty
about...
much was man for man, though, wasn't it? Wherever he was standing next to him.
Well, it was interesting because we spoke to Gary O'Neill after the game, and he said specifically he didn't want Dawson to go man for man because he knew if he got involved in a battle with him, he'd end up losing out. So he was giving him a little bit more room, doing his thing, and then when Haaland came into his zone, that's when he would engage with him, rather than getting dragged out into
we've been talking about
positions.
That, and how if you get too tight, how this guy's going to roll you. So it's like you have to come from the side, and you have to. When you make those hits, they have to count. You've got to win the ball, obviously, but you've got to let him know you're there. And that's something that Haaland, particularly we talked earlier, didn't we, about the Tomiyasu back pass? Well, that was Haaland who was actually making the contact first from the defender. The ball goes up in the air from Saliba. Saliba maybe should be hitting him. That's what we're talking about. You've got to be the one who puts down physically, you've got to be the one
He's getting more attention as well this year, isn't he? I mean, he's only scored 8 goals.
Yeah, but as I say, I think he'll come through that. They'll find a way. I think that's to do with the service. I think that's to do with the fact that De Bruyne now is not quite, hasn't been around, and they had this amazing telepathic link up between the two players. They want to get him tied down. With him being 23 years of age, I really can't see him being at Man City for the whole of his career. That would really surprise me.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, because Simon raised a really interesting point about the idea that for many years people have just thought that naturally he will be here for a little while, then he'll go off to Real Madrid or Barcelona. But has the landscape changed in European football? Is there still that lure and that lustre to go and play in Madrid or in Barcelona? Barcelona in a terrible position. Stadium's been knocked down. Don't know if it's going to be rebuilt in a certain time frame because their finances are so perilous. They're under investigation from all sorts of different financial investigations from different authorities. And then you've got Real Madrid who, they're still Real Madrid, but are they as alluring?
Bellingham
is their most...
Bellingham.
After Bellingham, Vinicius is obviously, when he's injured, then it doesn't look great for Real Madrid. You know that they got that experience of, look at the result they got against Napoli in midweek. They found, that's some result to win away at Napoli. So,
but is that the top of the tree still? Is Real Madrid still the top of the tree?
I don't know. It is really, because Man City are the current holders of the Champions League, and if they can go successfully winning this competition, then why would he want to leave to go elsewhere? It might just be a personal choice of his to try, in pastures new. It might be a lifestyle choice for him because he's a superstar, isn't he?
He's got a house in Spain,
Do you think if Man City had come in for Jude Bellingham, that he'd have chosen Manchester City over Real Madrid? Because that is the question that then leads you to the conclusion as to whether Real Madrid, for example,
I think because of financial fair play, they couldn't do it, could they? I think they made that clear. They couldn't afford Bellingham.
Well, they can afford whatever they choose, right? But the point is the question is if they would have gone in for him, do you think he'd have chosen Madrid over Manchester City?
I think he may well have done with the history and everything around it. He's already made that move abroad, hasn't he, for Dortmund?
So there we are.
He's on a bit of a trail.
The question is this, I maintain the view that there are Ferraris in this world and there are Red Bulls. And Manchester City's achievements are remarkable, but their imagery in the minds of players is still in the Red Bull territory, whereas the Ferraris...
For now, what if they win 3 Champions Leagues in a row?
Well, we'll see. I think it will take them a long time to get to a point where people think of them. Of course, they're capable of it. On the field, I mean, the only thing that's going to arrest Manchester City is when Guardiola, I think, decides that he's no longer going to manage that football club. Because I think at this moment in time where they are, and so they should be, they've got the best manager. I made this point earlier on in the show. They've got the best manager in world football. They've got the best centre-forward in world football. They've got the most money in world football. It should follow, to some extent, that they're in a situation where they are the best side.
Absolutely.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.